So how can you ace one of the most high yield sections of the ophthalmology portfolio, which is the commitment to specialty training section? And I take a deep dive into it and make sure that you get enough information to plan and do what you need to do to score the highest points possible in this section. So today I've started by going into the most high yield section of this entire portfolio, which is the commitment to specialty section. It gives a whopping 12 points to your portfolio, which is scored out of 50. So while I'm talking about all of these, I will take a deep dive into each subsection of this section. So within the commitment specialty section, you can then know what are the things you need to do to actually gain the most points you can out of this. And at the end of this video, I will mention some key tips which will make sure that you can score these points as easily as possible. So stick around till the end and you will find out what these tips are. And as we're talking, I will also include excerpts from my own portfolio so that you can see sort of examples of what I have used myself as well as I was building my own portfolio towards ophthalmology training in the UK. So my name is Saad. I'm an ophthalmology trainee here in the UK. I've gone through all of this and now I'm going to tell you how to do it yourself. To begin with, I will tell you what the commitment to specialty section is made up of. So the things that it's made up of is exams, publications, which you have not included in the separate dedicated publication section, electives or undergraduate projects that you might have done, taster weeks, times where you have attended the eye clinic in your free time, or you have attended theatre as well, any international meetings or meetings you have attended, any simulation training you have done, for example, working on the IC machine or taking any Royal College courses or surgical courses, and finally some miscellaneous things that can score you points in the commitment to specialty section. So starting straight through into the exams, there are two main exams which can score you points for your ophthalmology application. The first one is a refraction certificate. So if you have passed the refraction certificate before you actually enter training, it can score you 2 points. You can also get these 2 points for the refraction certificate if you are already a practicing optometrist. You can also get these 2 points if you are already a post-registration optometrist. This is an exam which teaches you clinical refraction, and it's not common for people to know how to do it before they get into training, just because the opportunities to train in refractions are not much available before you enter into training. There are many courses available online as well as in person which can teach you how to refract. Many of them can be quite expensive, but if you think that it's going to make a difference to your portfolio points, it is still a doable task. Next exam we're going to talk about is the FRCOphth Part 1 exam. So FRCOphth Part 1 exam gives you 3 points if you have successfully scored enough marks to pass this exam before you apply for training. If you have only attempted this exam, fear not, you will still get 1 point for this attempt. This exam itself is first of the 4 total exams that you generally do in training. It is arguably one of the most toughest exams you do as part of training because it deals with basic sciences of the eye, but it is very much doable with enough time and study given to it. Most of the resources you'll need are available online. I have also made videos on the different resources here on my YouTube channel and on my Instagram channel. I did not attempt the refraction certificate before I actually entered training. That is something that I will be doing during training, but I did give the FRCOphth Part 1 exam to build up my portfolio, and I would suggest if you have the time for it, it's a good way to add 3 points to your portfolio. Next we come to the publication sections. Now the reason I mentioned to you in the start that these are the publications which you have not mentioned in the actual research section is because there's a separate section in the portfolio apart from the commitment to specialty section which deals with publication. Now there's a limit to how many publications you can put in that section. So in this section here in the commitment section, you can also put the studies or publications which you have not mentioned in that other section. So what are the studies that you can put here? You can put here the case reports, you can put here non-peer reviewed publications, or you can put here peer reviewed publications which you have not put in the other section. The non-peer reviewed publications in this section will score you 0.5 points, whereas if you put in peer-reviewed publications which you have not put in the other section, they will score you 1 point, and if you put any case reports here, it will score you 1 point as well. Now in summary, you can score only 2 points maximum in this publication sections in the commitment section. It is also important that with your non-peer reviewed publications, now they are asking you to give them a letter where you state the impact of your non-peer reviewed publications. So this can be a letter from your supervisor, or this can be a sort of a letter written by yourself where you mention with evidence how many people have read this publication, whether it has been cited, whether it has been shared, just a way to tell how much of the impact is of your non-peer reviewed publication. Now, I've done a couple of non-peer reviewed publications as part of building my portfolio. I can show you them here and over here. And so using the opportunities that are given to you, one of the ways you can go about doing this is there are conferences in the world where if you present a topic to them, they will publish it in their abstract books or in their journals. And so if they have published your abstract or study in their journal, that can count as a non-peer reviewed publication. There are other examples of such non-peer reviewed publications. I would urge you to look online for these, or get in touch with your local ophthalmology department to ask them how you can go about publishing non-peer reviewed studies. Now, the next section I'm going to come to gives you a maximum of 2 points. This is the section which includes whether you have done any ophthalmology related electives, or if you've also done any sort of undergraduate project in ophthalmology. Now, within section, each of your achievement will score 1 point. And so you will need 2 achievements, which will give you the maximum points required for this section. And what they've asked in this portfolio is they've asked you to also reflect on whatever you have done. So a separate sort of a letter typed out where you will be reflecting on what you learned from this achievement, what you learned from this project, how you went about doing this, a reflection on that achievement. What's also mentioned in the guidance which is supplied to trainees is that if they had planned electives during times of COVID and the electives were cancelled, the points for elective will still be scored, in case that's what happened to you. As for undergraduate project, in the guidance given to applicants, an interesting point is mentioned where it is stated that if you have done the undergraduate project, you must have a supervisor write a letter for you stating that the project that you did is equivalent to about 2 weeks of full-time work. So just keep that in mind when you're using the evidences for such achievements. Now, here you can see my ophthalmology elective that I did in my university, and here you can see my ophthalmology elective that I did during internship. Next point is taster weeks. Now, taster weeks is a week you spend in ophthalmology where you are obviously being part of the team, and this can be done during your foundation training if you're in a training job and you're not rotating through foundation training. This can also be done if you're not doing foundation training. Let's say you are doing a non-training job, such as I was doing before I came to ophthalmology as a trainee. You can then request to spend this 1 week in the department of your choice, for example, ophthalmology, and then you will be getting a letter stating that you spent this 1 week in the department. Now, this is a taster week. This scores 1 point for the portfolio. Now, let's say you are already a foundation trainee here in the UK, and ophthalmology happens to be one of the rotations that you are rotating through. You don't need to do a taster week in that case. You will get the 1 point for spending your clinical attachment during your foundation training in ophthalmology. So here you can see the evidence of my taster week that I supplied and put in the portfolio. Next section I'm going to talk about is spending time in ophthalmology clinic and theaters in your free time. Now, it's important to remember that this is not a part of the taster week that you did previously. So this has to be a separate entity. This has to be separate time where you went to the ophthalmology department, sat in their clinics, sat in the theaters. The points you get for this is 1 point for the portfolio. Now, the guidance which has now been given about how do you score this, how do you spend that time, the guidance is that these sessions that you go to ophthalmology clinic and you spend in the theater or in the casualty clinic have to be 10 sessions in total. So in total, including the theater sessions and clinic sessions, have to be 10, and they have to be spaced out over the course of 3 months or more, which means that you cannot just do these 10 sessions over the course of a week and call it a day. You have to space out these sessions over the course of more than 3 months. So here's the evidence of my time that I spent in the ophthalmology casualty clinics and in theater in my free time. So I would take some time off from my workplace. So let's say I'm finishing off early maybe that day, or I'm finishing at 5 and I just want to go join the ophthalmology clinic casualty service out of hours. That's what I would do, and that's how I got these points. Now, this thing about being more than 3 months is fairly new. So not everybody who applied to training, let's say 2 years ago, 3 years ago, had this sort of a restriction, but this is a fairly new sort of a demand or request that your sessions in clinic and theater must be spaced out across 3 months. Next is evidence of simulation course. This section will score you a maximum of 2 points. Now, what does the simulation refer to? Well, this can refer to any sort of surgical training or any ophthalmologic simulation courses that you have done, and this will include the previously included section. Now, one of the courses that you can do is Introduction to Ophthalmic Surgery course by the Royal College. That will score you points as well here. And you can also spend time on the IC machine, which is the sort of simulation cataract surgery machine on which you can spend time, and it records your time, it records your data, and then you can use that data and time to evidence that you have spent time on it. But the interesting thing now is in the guidance it states that you get 1 point for every 4 hours that you spend on these simulation courses. So it is important that you find evidence to state that you have spent more than 4 hours on whatever it is that you are using as evidence for your simulation course. Here's my evidence. So here's a IC record of me spending time on that machine operating. I spent more than 4 hours on this machine, and that's what I used for evidence. And the second thing I used for evidence was the course that I did in FRCOphth, and that's a full day's course. So you can easily cover more than 4 hours of training through that as well. Then we have the meetings and conferences section. This scores you 3 points maximum. An important note about this section is, let's say you have given a presentation in one of the conferences that you have attended, and you've used the presentation in the presentation section, which is a separate section in the portfolio, which I will come to in a later video. You cannot use those conferences here. So the conferences and presentations you use here must not have been mentioned in the presentation section in the portfolio elsewhere. So just be careful about that you don't double mention presentations or conferences in the portfolio to avoid losing marks. So coming to this section, we have national or international conference or meeting that you have attended. You can get a maximum of 3 points out of these national and international meetings. You get 1 point for the meeting you attend. So let's say you've attended 1 national meeting, 2 international, that's a total of 3, and that's what you've gotten. Then within these meeting section, we have the regional meetings as well. Each regional meeting will score you half a point, so 0.5 points. You can get a maximum of 1 point for regional meeting. So let's say you've attended 2 regional meetings, let's say 1 in Scotland, 1 down south. You get half a point for each. That becomes 1 point in total for the regional meetings. Here are the meetings that I've attended. I've attended a mixture of international and national regional meetings, and this is what I submitted for my own case as well. Then finally, we have a miscellaneous section in the commitment to specialties section of the portfolio, which basically refers to any sort of discretionary points given to you for any evidences which don't really come into the categorization of the rest of this commitment section. So let's say you've done something that you're not sure contributes points to any of these other categories that I initially mentioned. You can place those evidences here and you might get some points for that. You can get a maximum of 2 points in this section. Now, coming to the bonus tips that I promised I will be mentioning at the end of this video to make your life a bit easy. Number 1, for any ambiguous evidence where you're not sure whether the quality of the evidence is good enough to state or make it clear that you scored the point, it is best you go to your supervisor and get a paper signed which clearly states what you needed to state to meet the requirement in the portfolio. Now, the supervisor must have obviously worked with you and must be able to fully vouch in all honesty that you've done the work, but to make it unambiguous and very clear for the people who read the portfolio and score your portfolio, make sure you have verbalized and you have written down in clear words in this letter from your supervisor that you have done all of. This will make it much easier for anybody scoring the portfolio to see that your supervisor can vouch for you that you have done this and that it meets the criteria you need to fulfill to get the points for the portfolio. Number 2, when you're doing the projects in real time, it is best to get some sort of preliminary evidence signed before you accumulate all the evidence ultimately and get a supervisor letter. So let's say, for example, that you're doing the 10 sessions that you need to do in the casualty or in theater for ophthalmology over the course of more than 3 months. Now by the end of the 3 months, when you want a supervisor letter signed stating that you have done those 10 sessions, maybe the supervisor forgets that you came to the department and did the 3 months with them. Maybe they go on leave, maybe they retire, maybe they are fired, who knows. So the best thing is that the day you come to the ophthalmology department to actually do something, get a preliminary sort of evidence signed. Get it signed by whichever doctor is with you. Get it signed by whoever you are working with at that stage. So in the future, when you come back and ask them to sign final official evidence for you, have everything you need, and the consultant has evidence that you actually did all of that when you initially came to them. So that's it for this video. I hope this was useful. Remember, the commitment section is the most highest yield section in the portfolio, so make sure you try and max out your points in this. You might notice that all the individual points added up together do not make 12, they actually make more than 12, and that is absolutely normal. This gives you the chance to use different evidences throughout this portfolio to get to the 12 points. Getting all of these above is not necessary as long as you get a total of 12 points. As you can tell from my own portfolio as well, there are some things that I've done and some things I have not done, and yet I managed to get a full 12 marks. So that's it for today. I hope you liked my video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe to my channel for more things relevant to the portfolio, to ophthalmology in general. If there is something in particular that you would like to see or know about, make sure to leave that down in the comment section below. I will be continuing this portfolio series here on out as well, and making more content about how to get strong portfolio before you apply. And if you want to see my latest video as well, you'll find it right over here. I'll see you in the next video.